Hi everybody, welcome to this fine talk. Michael Sernik's back. He is going to do a discussion with us today. So we got a few questions following our last two webinars that we wanted to cover, and also there are a few things that I wanted to talk to him about, and we thought it'd be worthwhile recording it. So hi Michael.
Hi, how you going, Dan?
Very good. It's kind of weird. We've already been chatting before this, so it seems strange to reintroduce ourselves. So I thought to get us going, Michael, so I came over to Australia and saw your big case dentistry presentation on the Sernik system. And it was very clear that it's something that is an applied science that you've developed yourself, and almost as behavioral psychology and economics has kind of come out over the past 5 years, you've realized the scientific backing to everything you're doing. But you really discovered it by doing, and I thought that was intriguing. So could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, look, after I graduated from dentistry, and I worked in England for 6 years, I came back to Australia. In England, I had a very much a national health existence. I had 5 treatment rooms. I had a bunch of hygienists, and it was all intravenous, and I was intubating people. It was a very different world back then. But that was one aspect of dentistry. Then I came back to Australia and I worked in a part of Sydney called North Sydney. It's a very commercial area, and it was all Crown and Bridge, and a lot of it was referrals from other dentists. So I've had 5 practices, but they're 2 examples of big extremes. And I'm saying that so people understand that I sort of get it from both perspectives of what sort of thing. But I learned a long time ago that it's really important to be able to get the patient to want the treatment. And so I started paying a lot of attention to what was working and what wasn't when I spoke, because I remember once saying to a patient, look, this is very expensive, it's a bridge, not everyone can afford it, and I can understand if you don't want it. And the more I was sort of backing off, the more he was moving forward and wanted it. And I started to realize there was something in this, because when I had tried to talk people into things, it was as if I'm moving forward, trying to get them to do something. And the natural response was people to recoil a little bit and sort of say, well, how much is that? And why do I need it? Blah, blah. But the more I looked like I wasn't pushing them, the more they wanted it. Now, out of that little kernel of just insight, over many years of working, I started to come up with a way of doing this so that I could teach other people, because I employed dentists and I wanted them to know what I had sort of picked up intuitively. So really what happened, and where you're alluding to, is that I created a course that didn't come out of textbooks, it didn't come out of theory, it didn't come out of me studying sales. It came out of just doing enough dentistry and being very attuned to what appeared to be working and what didn't, and how do I teach other people to duplicate me, that a course developed, and the structure of it was completely based on the fact that it worked. If things didn't work, I wouldn't have put it in, because I wasn't trying to create a course to sell. I was just trying to create a course to use to be able to train other people. So that happened. And for many years, my practices grew very strongly. And it wasn't through advertising, because back then you couldn't even pay for advertising. You couldn't do any advertising. It was illegal. You get struck off. No advertising, growing practices. And in a day when almost no dentists had more than 1 practice, because in those days, it was pre-corporatization. Only a dentist could own a dental practice. So it was very much about being a professional, very much about having verbal skills, which is just about all you had to do. And yet if you could grow that's what worked. And then ultimately I joined with another dentist. We had a practice management company. We had lots and lots of coaches. I worked around the world, but my shtick, the thing that I focused on was all around communication skills. So I created a 5-day course just on that. And I worked in Las Vegas for many years with dentists that their average case was $80,000, because they were all doing full mouth reconstruction. It was a postgraduate university there, and that's all they did. So these people really needed to know, how do you get that going? And they were very sensitized against sales, because as much as we think of Americans love selling and all that stuff, they actually don't like it any more than any of us because it's uncomfortable selling. So sorry for speaking so much, but that's the background. And, you know, and it turned into a phenomenon, really, that ultimately, you know, people were coming sometimes 8 times to do the same course again because it was actually complex. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah. I think you said something to me once that because we've all had so much sales training throughout our career, actually people pick up on it. So when, you know, your average patient in the chair is probably familiar to the techniques that they're having used on them, and the minute you realize that someone's trying to sell to you, your back goes up. And I know in my own life when you're buying a car or something and someone's using the techniques on you, you're like, come on, man, yeah. we can do better than this.
So the fact is, actually, we don't mind it when salespeople do it because we know they're in sales. So you know, you don't get highly offended. You just notice that they're selling. But when a healthcare professional is doing it to you, it's almost like a priest being a pedophile. It's that sort of, I'm not expecting this from you. This is really so counter to what I want. Somebody's sort of selling me surgery or something and trying to talk me into doing things with my body. That really pisses me off. You know, so that's. It has a different dimension when the person that you're trusting for your healthcare is now trying to make money off you.
Absolutely. So throughout, so I've kind of seen your webinars, I've seen you live. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you say to this. Can everyone do the Sernik system? Because I think there's so a lot of advice in dentistry has been about kind of creating these things where you can pay us and we'll take all the responsibility away from you and your business will be great, or you can pay us and suddenly you'll be a great salesperson. Whereas I think the Sernik system actually puts the responsibility back on the individual and says, you actually have to be better. You have to change how you work. You have to change how you think, and you have to change how you approach dentistry. And then ultimately you'll make more money. Can everyone do that? Or is that, you know?
Well, the whole thing is full of paradox. And the paradox in the answer that I'm going to give you is the more experienced you are, the harder it is to learn this. And the reason for that is dentistry is such a repetitive business that we don't realize that we get completely conditioned, we get completely reflexed in everything that we do. And because it's such a deep reflex, I mean, there's so many things that dentists do that's repetitive. After a while, you're on automatic pilot. And it's so, if I were to say to somebody, look, don't recommend treatment. Now, that sounds completely like heresy. I mean, how can you not recommend? And then they'll say, well, that's ridiculous. As soon as the patient says to me, so what do you recommend? I'm going to recommend something. So there's so many things there that they think just can't possibly work. And the only way I can get somebody to do something is to say to them, I recommend this, or I think you should do that. Now, those dentists, the longer they've been doing it, instead of being at a 0 to go from 0 to 10 to learn, they might be at -10. Mm-hmm. So now they have to unlearn everything just to get to 0, and then they have to learn to get to 10. So it's actually quite tricky. If you've got a brand new graduate, you can probably teach them to do this quicker because they're not having to unravel a whole bunch of conditioned reflexes that are absolutely just built into them. But the nice thing is that it's such a low pressure system, it is so pleasant to do, and that once you master it and it becomes intuitive to you, then life becomes, first of all, you can't get rejected because you're never actually pushing anybody. So there's nothing to push against. So that itself is very nice. You're always having a nice relationship with every single patient, no matter who they are. You actually need to get it into psyche that you don't care what they choose, which again seems counterintuitive because in a way we care. We want them to do the right thing and all the rest of it. But the paradox is the more you care, the more that sometimes they're feeling it like a dog feels fear on you, that when you're sort of starting to act like you want them to do something and people get sensitive to it, they'll back off even further. And the more they think that, look, I'm just the conveyor of neutral information. I'm like an assessor. I'm just telling you exactly how this building is. This part's well done. This part's a bit weak. This part's well done. This part's a bit weak. You balance out everything that you say, and you can talk to the patient in such a way that it's very neutral. And then, and what happens is the patient now starts to realize they own the problem. If you show that you care more than them, you own the problem, and now you're sort of in the equation of the decision making, and we have to take ourselves out of that. So there's all this psychological stuff that needs to happen. And once you get to that point, you know what to do almost, because the principle tells you what to do. Now, I go through with people with scripts and help them all sorts of stuff, but at the end of the day, having a deeper understanding of where your position is in this conversation actually makes it very easy, because you can just be yourself. You don't have to remember anything.
Yeah. So we were talking before this call about, so the last webinar you did is actually rethinking completely the business model of a dental practice and really leveraging the clinician's time. So essentially when they're working, there's kind of fees being generated and everything else is de-skilled and outsourced to everyone else. Most of what we were discussing was based around the principle, the principle maximizing, leveraging their time. Is it realistic for us to have a team of associates that are also leveraging their time in the same way? And if so, how?
Well, even better in a way. In many ways, this is ideal for a large group practice where they have great discrepancy between top clinicians and brand new ones, or ones who are poor performers. And often they're not even the new ones, they're often the very experienced dentist who's just lost faith in everything and now they just plod along. So one way or the other, if you can take the dentist out of being the main sort of lever in the success or failure, if you took the dentist out and put a system in of well-trained people who can basically be helping this dentist or this one, right? You're now starting to even out the whole thing. And if that dentist just has to come in, say a few things, do what they have to do, and then get out of there, you can have a much more efficient system and a much higher, high performance.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I were talking a little bit. I was telling you about a dentist friend of mine in Dallas, Texas, who I visited. Now, he is one clinician. Now, he's unusual because he's a facial-maxillar surgeon and other things, but he has a team of 12, and he's the only clinician. Now, the team brings in the patient, takes photos, inducts them, talks to them, does everything. He comes in at a critical period, just has a look around, gives a bit of information out, bonds nicely with the patient, but probably isn't spending more than 10 minutes with them. When he goes into another room and doing other things like that, but now the team take over. They continue the conversation, they do everything, they prepare everything. So he's running such an efficient system that if he were working in just one room all the time, then that would be highly inefficient. You've got changeover time, you've got waiting for the local to work, you've got waiting for the impression to set, or this or that, or you're taking photos. You're just wasting time doing a whole bunch of junk that is, other people can do it. Now, the only reason other people aren't doing it is they haven't been trained, and the trainer, which meaning literally the dentist, doesn't know exactly what this model is. Now, this guy works probably 5 or 6 rooms at the same time, but he does it in a very relaxed way. It's completely controlled. The patient's getting better than world-class service. You've never seen anything like it. It's top of the tree. So it's not this model of the dentist running, sweating from room to room with the patients all frustrated saying, where are you going now? It's none of that stuff. It's completely different because you've got the team providing a much higher level of service. So there's a model there that people need to understand exists. It's much more productive. You can see many more people. And I showed last time that little bit of a formula that if you go past your fixed expenses, everything beyond that is only your variable expenses, which means the profit in every pound beyond the series of the amount of money that it takes to cover your fixed expenses. Beyond that, every single pound has got nearly a 90% profitability, 17% to be exact, it's 83%. 83% profitability as opposed to much less profitability when you are not reaching your full potential. In other words, what I'm saying is you've got to do everything possible to increase the top line, because then after that, when you get past a certain point, your profitability is really exaggerated. Yeah. And so your costs come down, your percentage of margin is much, much better. Now, if you do the combination of growing the top line, but also having this leverage, it means that you can actually afford to even drop your prices, which for many dentists, it's a terrible thing. They're dropping my prices. I would never drop my prices. Well, if you drop your prices, but you made 4 times as much money, you should drop your prices. And if you leave them the way they are and you're not busy enough and you're not making money and you go bankrupt, that's not a cool deal. So it's all about being smarter and understanding the full picture. So the bits that are changeable is all about communication skills and getting the team to do things that maybe they're not used to at the moment, but they can be taught.
I really agree with you there, particularly around pricing, because there's been an interesting thing. Obviously, I speak to all my clients and people that are looking to come on board with us, and there's been a few people saying, well, we should put the PPE costs back on the customer, which we're saying is madness. Like it's absolutely, really not a good thing to do as people become more and more price sensitive. And it, as you say, it may seem counterintuitive to actually reduce your prices or the known value prices. So like reduce a checkup to £20 or something like that. But I think actually that's the space to compete in the future, because the NHS is changing radically. I don't think there's going to be the same level of provision of NHS dentistry, and it wasn't great before. So if you can deliver private dentistry that's affordable, I think you can capture a ton of the market. So we talk about it in terms of the EasyJet dentist, but like you say, it doesn't work unless you've got the systems in place. So unless you can leverage the time of the clinicians, it doesn't make sense, because you'll just be losing money essentially.
Yes.
So
very important.
So related to that, if you were to open a practice tomorrow, well, I'll give you a month to plan for it, where would it be? What would it look like? What would the structure of it be? How would you position it?
Well, that's a difficult question, isn't it? Exactly where. The truth is you can make almost any model work.
Yeah.
So if I lived in an area that was very, very, let's just call it low socioeconomic, I don't like talking classes, but let's say it's low socioeconomic area, you'd have to be on price, okay? And you'd have to therefore try to have a very efficient system, and you'd really have to watch the price, because you've got to keep it full enough. But if you can tap into a market where people have money, when I look at what's happening in the national health, the quality of dentistry in the national health is not even third world. Okay, sorry to upset people, but it isn't. It's terrible, and there's no way people can have high-level dentistry. And if you think you're doing high-level dentistry, you're fooling yourself. You can't. There's the incentive is pushing it the wrong way. So, and even if it's not you, generalized, okay, I don't want to upset anyone, but generalized, the national health is not going to breed high quality dentistry. Certainly I would want any of that. And so if there is a big market, I think, in the UK, but it's very price sensitive, it's going to be more price sensitive. So that becomes now the trick. Now it'll depend on where you are, but if you can have it so that you can show the patients the other world of how things can, they don't know what good looks like. Nobody wants to walk around with infection in their mouth. So you've got to start with periodontal disease and obvious decay. Most people don't want that. I don't care who they are. People have got to understand the problem with losing teeth also. I mean, losing teeth is the beginning to getting ultimately full dentures. So the big motivator actually isn't we can make your smile brighter and better and cleaner and all that. It's if you don't do treatment, this is what happens. People need, and when people understand they're on a path that's a sliding path and it's going to end ugly somewhere, that's when they'll make a move to say, you know what, I don't think I want that. What else can we do? So there's all these communication skills that are very important to get that right. But where would I have it? I would want to get volume, and I'd want to be in a reasonable socio-economic area where people can afford the treatment. I guess that's pretty obvious, but like I say, it actually can be done everywhere.
Mhm.
But I don't think you can make money under the National Health, from what I understand. It just seems too difficult.
I mean, to put it in perspective, you couldn't really make money before unless you had had it at a massive scale. So, as you said, the incentives involved were kind of perverse in a sense that the only way you could actually make money from it is deliver less treatment. So, kind of decrease your checkup time, so you get more UDAs through, and you can bill as much as possible. But it's, you know, that's the nature of the beast, I guess. And obviously if we're doubling treatment time and we're giving an extra 30 or 40 pounds PPE costs, suddenly it doesn't make sense anymore. So I do know, been getting a lot of emails over the past few days with people with NHS contracts, and the NHS are changing things. We don't know what's going to come out in the wash, but I think there's going to be a large portion of the UK market that did go to the NHS before. Even, you know, they could afford private dentistry, but why not go to the NHS? That are now going to be looking around and kind of thinking, well, I'll try private. And the way to capture that, I think you're right. Particularly around the checkup price, I think that's the place to compete, because the other side of things is, I don't think people, if you do a price comparison of the competitive set in an area, prices are all over the shop. But the one thing that people compare is hygiene and checkup. So that is the space.
So having a lot of reader is not such a bad thing, but you've got to basically get the patient to like you. Excuse me. When the patient comes, they've got to like you as a person. They've got to like the team. But, you know, you've got to sort of become somebody that they, I guess is the only way to put it, they got to like you. So it's about relationships, it's about bonding with them and all the rest. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. The team can do it. It's possible to do it without spending too much time, but that's pretty important.
Definitely. It seems simple, but I think it's a big ask for some people to be a likable person. So we one thing we endorse is having a treatment coordinator that almost becomes the patient's partner through their journey through the practice. So they're a kind of second opinion from the dentist, so they can say, you know, did everything come across right? They actually become a point of feedback as well to the clinician. So, oh, you know, when you presented that treatment plan, Sarah actually thought you were being a bit arrogant about it or something, and it didn't come across well. So you're getting every bite of the cherry. Because obviously, if you're running a loss leader checkup service or whatever, you have to make sure the systems are in place so you're capturing the value downstream. So
yeah, that's right. It's very much about the quality of the experience that you get to the patient. And there are things that are self-evident after a while, but at the beginning, when you're a new dentist, or even if you're experienced and you've already got habits that aren't terrific, it doesn't hurt to, you know, learn new skills, I guess. And there are skills that I've learned around this area.
Yeah. So, kind of a final question, a bit from left field. Is there anything that we're not talking about that we should be? I feel a lot of the conversations currently are about things we can't control. So, you know, what's dentistry going to look like when we come back? And we know it's going to look one way and then probably shift over the next few months. What should we be thinking about in dentistry globally that people aren't talking about at the moment?
Well, if we're talking clinical things, that's one thing. But when you started speaking, what came to my mind is that we can be probably more efficient with the pricing. What I mean by that is a dentist will typically think, look, an implant is worth X, right? And yes, it requires more skill, although these days less and less because it's getting easier to do. But if you price an implant and start thinking in terms of how much time is it really taking you, and you put a pound or a money value on your hour, right, and start thinking in terms of, okay, I'm going to look at my business a bit differently. I'm going to look at it from the point of view of what do I need to make an hour comfortably? And now I work backwards and start to time all my procedures, and we start to charge an appropriate amount. I don't do cleaning. I get a hygienist for that. That's a no-brainer, because you can't earn enough money on hourly rates unless you basically do 2-second clean or something. But if let's assume you're going to do a higher quality of dentistry, and you take photos and you do everything right, and the patient's really recognizing that you're doing something well. Add to that you're charging for crowns and inlays and implants and whatever else you're doing based on the amount of time it takes. And then on top of that, you start to get much more time efficient by using team members to help you with everything, and you work multiple rooms, but you do it well so the patient isn't feeling abandoned. You can now actually have lower prices for all sorts of things and have a consistently high hourly rate, and be busy because you're more competitive than other people, and you're smarter, and you've got people that you hire who have got high social intelligence, emotional intelligence, because you're running a high-level operation all the way through. But you've got to think in terms of the relationships. It's not a mechanistic thing. It's very human. You know, you've got to relate to the patient, get your pricing right, get efficient at every single level, and treat it like a business all the way through. And in any good business, you've got to have customers that like you and you like them. So, you know, mostly, as I say, our pricing is based on a historical value that we place on certain things. Now, I think I can probably do a ceramic inlay quicker than I can do a good quality composite. Now, the inlay normally costs a lot more. I can probably do it quicker, right? And so I should price it accordingly. High quality dentistry at a reasonable price, and not get all hung up that these procedures have to cost this amount of money. And the other thing is, if people have any private insurance, and I think there's about 15% of people in the country that have private dental insurance, understand your insurance before you even do a treatment plan. But there's a lot you can do, and being completely ethical, by the way, to build a treatment plan based on maximizing the benefit for the patient, so that they're getting the most amount back. You're still doing the treatment, and if there's something that has to be done next time when their, you know, premiums, you know, will pay or whatever, then you do it that way. So it's about being clever at every angle and looking at the whole picture all the time. Because that's what we're doing in Australia with some people now. Dentists were always traditionally just doing the checkup, telling people what they needed to do, and go to the front desk, and the insurance is your headache. Now, that's a stupid thing to do, because you can do so much more now, and you can adjust the treatment plan so that patients thrilled to bits that they're hardly paying anything, or paying a little bit more, but they're getting so much more that it all works out. So it's about being clever from every perspective. You can't be arrogant.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There's kind of a myth that's kind of in the zeitgeist of this period of time, that you make money, you make profit by just charging people more. So kind of, you know, we're getting people to spend more money with you, but it's actually at every interaction being smart, as you say, being clever, and actually making you create the margins all the way through the process. So profit's kind of indicative of doing things right, rather than just charging something over the odds. So it's quite interesting.
I must say one other little thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know I'll forget if I don't say it.
Yeah.
But if you don't care how much time the patient is with other team members, if the patient's happy, they're being nurtured, they're learning something, you talk, you know, and they're relating with them, terrific. As long as the dentist is the only one you care about with the hourly rate. And I always overstaffed myself significantly, and it made I was so much more profitable. So much more profitable. Back in the 70s, I had an accountant that had 1,000 dentists as clients. He told me I was the most productive dentist he'd ever come across. But I was working out a system back then that it was possible to do that. So I've been doing this for a long, long, long time. And I know that when you really think about it and just break the rules, don't worry about, I have to charge this much for a crown or this much for a crown. If I can do a crown faster than I can do a filling, I should be charging less than the crown, for the crown than the filling. That's the thing. And if I can get the team to help me on everything, and I come in, do my thing, go out, terrific. I don't care how long they're there with the team members. So it's about breaking all sorts of paradigms that we may have in our heads.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's great. In innovation theory, there's a question that you've got to ask yourself, which is do better or do different. And I think what I get from speaking to you, Michael, quite a lot is it's not do a few tweaks here and there. It's actually remodel how the production of your dental practice works. And that's where you get the gains. You don't get the gains by kind of competing against the guy down the road. It's about creating a new game. And I find that very exciting because, you know, frankly, it's an area that we have been unable to advise on because we're not dentists. You know, we don't know how it works. So
well, with dentistry, we have a lot of rules built into our head, and we think that these are sacrosanct and we can't break these rules. Who made the rules? You know, who said that I have to be at this point? Let someone else do it. Then I'll come in at this point. Who said I have to charge this much? I can charge what I want. So, you know, you can adjust it. You can be very free with your thinking and go from first principles and question the question right at the beginning. Like, is there any reason to doing it like this? And get mature staff, get fun people. They've got to have personality plus and fix their damn teeth. Don't have some lady with a missing front tooth as your bloody receptionist. I've seen stupid things like that. I mean, you know, if you're expecting to do cosmetic dentistry, you have to have your team looking fabulous.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest risks in dentistry is people coming back and just wanting things to get back to normal. I think they're the guys that are going to suffer the most. So,
good luck with. Yeah. We are in a river which is frothing with, you know, it's moving over the rocks and it's frothy and it's a deluge and it's carrying you down towards a waterfall. So you can pretend nothing's fine and lay on the little piece of rubber and think I'm terrific. You're not, because the world is changing. So you've got to learn how to go upstream, get out of the river, do something. You can't just let it take you because the forces are bigger than you.
Absolutely. Well, I think we'll stop that there. That was great, Michael. Thank you very much. I hope everyone watching this enjoys it. And if you've got any further questions, let us know. So yeah, thank you again, Michael, and hopefully speak again soon.
I hope people ask questions like, how do we do this and how do we do that now? Because there's a whole range of, I've given you the problem, but we haven't really worked on the solution. So they should know that there are solutions. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I hope, that we're going to hopefully work in partnership so you can help me bring this to UK dental practices and understanding how we actually implement this leverage model. Because we've got one side of it, but we haven't got the clinician side. So we do need your insight and advice on that. So thank you again, and catch you. Cheers.
All the best. Bye-bye.